everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Well, I haven't talked to you in a while.
I know. I've missed you. It's actually been a long time.
Yeah, it's probably not been that long, but
Well,
feels like a long time.
Kind of. Yeah.
Like a week, 2
and
weeks.
a half, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Week and a half. Yeah.
That's a long time. We usually talk
For
a few
us.
times a week.
Yeah. Well, so I was like, oh, what are we going to talk about today? Like, I didn't actually, since you and I hadn't synced up on like any like topic for the pod, what was going on in our lives or anything like that.
Right.
We have no topic.
Yeah. But now we do.
Why? Why do we have a topic?
Well, because we haven't talked in a long time.
Oh, now we can just talk about talking.
Yeah, I think we should talk about talking.
Now this is where any good podcast like hits its high point. We'll have an episode where we talk about talking. This is like a real Seinfeld moment.
Hey, we are equipped.
At the top of our game.
We are equipped and ready to roll.
Well, we should talk about talking because I think that is a fun, interesting thing to think about and talk about.
I do too.
And just when we were catching up before this, I knew that you and your friend went on a road trip.
Yes.
And I can only imagine the amount of talking that happened on that road trip.
Oh, we have been on a circuit together for the last 2 weeks, delivering leadership development sessions. And interestingly enough, our topics have been emotional intelligence and conversation, communication styles.
So,
let me get out my teacher's notes.
Me see. Get the syllabus out.
Now, I do think this is a great conversation though, because there are a number of different kinds of talking people can do, number of different kinds of conversations that people have. And I don't think we think about it that often, that specifically.
So, okay. So like start with kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Like, the most typical kind of conversation you're going to run into is like some small talk.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. And I called that like connection conversations. I actually wrote notes. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair, we talked about this for 30 seconds. So I really have 5 notes.
Okay.
5 bullet points, not full sentences.
Okay. So wait a second. I always think about you come across someone, maybe you haven't seen them in a while or you don't know them that well.
Yeah.
Or you're just meeting somebody and it's a whole bunch of like small talk, which is like, how's the weather? What are you doing? Like,
okay.
It's just like the very like little nuggets of conversation. But you called it something else. What did you call it?
Well, actually, no, maybe that is its own subset, small talk. I actually called that level of conversation where you might not be talking about a particular topic or in a particular area, but it's connection. Just like you and I were just talking. We haven't talked in a while and just catching up and hearing what's going on with each other. And you're just making connections. I think that opens the door for having any deeper conversations that may be present or ready to happen.
You're saying like we can't just dive into a deep conversation. It's like a warm-up conversation.
I think some people can actually, but I think most people need a warm-up.
Yeah. This week, I did something that I don't normally do. And it was because of Michael from a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I said like a loose acquaintance wanted to get together that I had met like at the co-working space like quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And he reached out to just like stay in touch. And he's like, you want to get together? And like almost always, especially the past couple weeks, it would be just like a no. Like, no way do I have
Straight
time
up
for
no.
that.
Straight up no.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
that's
I have all these reasons why it's no. But no, I just said yes, right? So Michael kind of taught us like, hey, just say yes more. So I said yes.
Yeah.
And it was pretty interesting because we did some of the little small talk stuff, which I really hate doing.
Yeah.
Just like get through this part.
I don't really like small talk either.
But within a few minutes, like we were talking about, like he's got small kids, he had a full-time job, but he was talking about the past few months about how he and his wife decided that she was going to be the full-time like income earner at their house. He was going to drop back and start taking care of the kids.
Okay.
A little bit, of a classic, I guess, role reversal. Yeah. And so he and I really quickly started talking about how he felt about that, like what was happening around those decisions.
So that's a connection conversation.
And it went pretty deep really fast for someone I didn't really know. I was like, whoa, like this is, and so we talked for like an hour. And then I did another thing that Michael taught us, which was, so he was talking about this whole journey, and he's a writer. He was talking about this whole journey that he had made over the past few months, not only just like tactically moving into this new role, but emotionally, how he was moving through it.
Interesting. So he had a lot of self-awareness as he was talking.
Yeah. And I was like, dude,
wow.
You should write about this. Like, this is like your understanding of your state going through this journey is really amazing. And I think you should share it. And he goes, I had never considered that.
Oh my gosh, watch, he ends up writing a like famous book.
I know, right? And that's exactly what Michael was talking about. Like, how do you help shed light on others?
Right.
So in any case, the point of that story wasn't about so much that, but like the idea that with some people, it's pretty easy to go into a deeper conversation or a more vulnerable conversation quickly. And I wonder why that is. Because some people, like, you really can't break into that next layer, and some just really willingly go there with you.
I agree. And I think that there is a high level of vulnerability when people are willing to have deeper conversations. It requires vulnerability because having a deeper conversation is exposing a deeper part of yourself. Even if you're focusing on someone else's story at the moment, you're still having to be open and vulnerable. And it just is it just feels different. It just feels different. And that's I had written too, like, okay, so I took this in a little different direction. Because I really like how you just formatted that, and I'd like to come back to that. But I want to also just mention like some of the other types that I was thinking about, because they sort of float in and out of this. I said connection, and then I also said support. A lot of us are in need of support, and we are unsure of how to show that we need support, or we may not even be consciously aware that we're needing support, but we need support. And I think that is also a type of conversation that we have. And again, that requires not having to one up someone, not necessarily worrying about if you're right or wrong. It just means being open and vulnerable both, so that you can get to the source of what that person is needing. And I think that's a really, really big one.
So let me think about that. Like, when you say that, I think about like me supporting others, like someone else just needs to talk or express themselves.
Like what you just described. Or, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's one thing that I've kind of like learned in conversations or being in partnership with others is like, um, sometimes people just, they need that support. But
Right.
I think a lot of times where conversations go a little weird is like, you can support somebody and you can also not agree with them.
Mm. Mm.
I think there's so much of
Interesting.
conversation that people have to agree. Like if you and I are talking, I'm fumbling around explaining it, but like if you are talking about something, and you're expressing like a very strong, like opinion, or
Right.
or you're feeling challenged in some way, so you're feeling a little threatened, but I don't agree with your like worldview on that in the first place.
Yeah.
I will likely try to argue that your thinking is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When what I should be, or change your thinking. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but instead what you actually need from me is just to agree, and I can support you, but still not agree with your thinking.
Yeah.
And that's like a nuance to conversation and being with people that I think is hard to do.
Right. Right. I totally agree, because if you have a disagreement about somebody's worldview and they're hurting and they're close to you, it's the old question, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah, right. Totally.
And I framed that as maybe a potential conflict conversation or challenging or challenged conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we naturally enter into those, most of us, most of the time. So no, I won't say always and never, but most of us, most of the time, don't enter into those conversations open and vulnerable. We usually come into those conversations armored up.
Mm-hmm.
I have all the list of things that I'm going to say. I'm certainly feeling a little defensive. So even though, I feel a little bad for this person because they're not feeling good, but you know what? Right. So like that defense piece. And I feel like that's a natural response for self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it prevents us from being connected with others. It really, really prevents that conversation, in my opinion, from being free and available to do what is highly needed.
Yeah. Why do people like go into that challenge style conversation?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good question. If we knew that, we would solve all the world problems. There would be no political challenge.
The thing that popped into my head when you said a challenge conversation, I'm like, oh, I know that. I know what that is, because Melissa does that to me all the time.
No, I don't. Why do you say that? Only because you need it. Let me tell you the 76 reasons.
But not in the way you're just doing it right now.
No.
You'll say things like, hey, we should talk about like your energy this week. You come at it like, hey, we need to talk about what's going on with, like your business, with your family. Like, you come at it like I've noticed something in you, and I don't think you're going to find it comfortable, but we're going to talk about it anyway. You do it in the most pleasant way.
Oh, thank you. I also wait. I do wait.
You are very patient with it too. I know.
Yeah, see, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. You are very patient with it. I'm going to need you to write that down, please, with the date. For you. Yes. Yes. Thank you for noticing.
Well, that's what I thought you were talking about when you said a challenge conversation, because there are conversations we have to have with like people in our lives that we love.
Yeah,
that
that's right.
Hold them accountable, call them out on their own BS, like all sorts of things. And how do you approach those conversations? I don't think that's what you were just talking about. You were talking about
well, no, it could be part of that.
It could be, but you were kind of talking about like if I'm not feeling super good, I can get snippy. Actually, like last night, Amber called me out for being short with her all day. Like, well, she's like, why are you being so short with me today? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. stop it, go away.
See, that's not that's nicer of her, because what I say to Mitch is, why are you being assy? See, it's a lot nicer for her to name it like she did than the way I do.
But sometimes like I might act in a way that I'm not really intending, or I'm like I was probably really self-focused. Actually,
preoccupied.
I was preoccupied. I actually wasn't feeling super good. So I was like, my energy was really low, and I just really didn't have it in me to really engage with anybody.
Yeah.
Especially unnecessarily.
Yeah. Unnecessarily. Air quotes. I'm totally doing air quotes, and I'm on Amber's side here for this, just so you know.
But sometimes it's not you. It's
right.
it's not them, it's you, or it's not you, it's them. It's
right.
In a conversation it takes two, and when one person's like not into it for whatever reason, you might take it actually personally when it's not about you at all.
Right. Do you want to hear something really cool that I learned from Mary in our session? So if you picture the brain, like a side profile of the brain, okay? The back of your brain is your brain stem, right? The spinal column goes into your brain stem. I learned that, I'm going to put it in Melissa terms, not Mary, cognitive psychologist terms. Although hers is way better, but you'll have to suffer through mine. Every sense that you have comes through the back of your brain, through this brainstem. Every single thing you see, hear, taste, smell, or touch comes through the back of your brain, and it goes up through the middle part of your brain, which is called the limbic brain, and that is where all of your feelings, the feeling sources. And it goes through that limbic brain to the front of your brain. I think it's called the prefrontal cortex. I might be wrong. It goes to the front of your brain, but that's where all your thoughts are. Your logic, rational, all of the thinking happens in the front of your brain. So I know you're thinking, what are you saying right now? Here's the thing though. All of your senses create, like your conversation, your talking, everything comes through the feeling part of your brain. And then it goes to the first. Everything goes through the feeling part of your brain. And so I was kind of blown away when I started thinking about it like this, because as you think about how people react and respond, it's going through that feeling source first, and then it hits the logical brain.
Yeah.
So people, because we say sometimes it feels like people don't have feelings. Like when they're talking about things, they just is personality driving that? Is it mood driving that? And it's not. It's just how you've conditioned your brain. So as we were kind of talking about why is this an important thing, it's because as we talk about emotional intelligence, which would be right here, how we can be supportive of people, how we have the emotional intelligence to interact with people, to feel the feelings that people are having, to be empathetic, to understand, to be able to respond in a way that is appropriate, it has to go through this whole thing. And I just find that sort of fascinating to think about like that.
Yeah.
So if our ability to be with people in conversation, I think is so driven towards not just our instinct, but our emotional intelligence, our self-awareness, and then our awareness of other things, and the management of all of that. Like it's pretty complex. It's a complex relationship. And so when we talk about how do we be in partnership with people, how are we in partnership with people if we have a higher level of awareness and a higher level of EQ than someone else? And they are needing something, and you can see that they're needing something, but they're not aware that they are. You're going to treat them a little differently than somebody who is perhaps higher in EQ than you are. How do you treat them? And what are you telling yourself about someone like that? Like, oh, these people are so much better than me. Like, they're so much more aware, or, like how we talk about Michael. like Michael Olaso. We just think he's amazing, right? And as we talk about being in a deeper discussion with him, how does that change based on that?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting because even just thinking about having a follow-up conversation with him, it's just like, I'm like, oh, I would just go very deep right away. Like I know where to go with him right away.
Right. So there it is. Like that's your awareness, right? And knowing what his is.
Yeah. Some things I kind of heard you say while you were explaining that was the idea that any conversation, any, audio input
Anything
you have, it hits your emotions first and then the thinking part of your brain second. So it's whatever you hear is already being colored by emotions before you even consciously become aware of it.
100%. And Mary was very specific to say, and I say this too, but she said it in a much more, a better way, which was no emotion or feeling is bad. It is simply information. Every emotion is information. And I was like, that's kind of amazing because how often are we labeling emotions? We always label emotions and we never ever label them in that sort of neutral way. We're always saying that's bad or that's good. It's just natural to judge, I think.
Well, yeah, even judging them, I would say that a lot of day to day, you're just not even aware of those emotional responses, like from interaction to interaction.
Yes, because
they're so rapid fire. I mean, you're talking to somebody and then you're like, it's just the waves up and down and you're not even paying attention.
And those are called schemas. I learned this too. So the way that we think about things, our brain wants to shortcut everything.
I want to go get trapped in a car with Mary for 5 hours.
No, she taught this part. She taught. I had her come and do some teaching for me.
Maybe I should come to a seminar.
Yeah, I'm telling you though, it was fascinating because yes, in combination, you went exactly right there, and that is, the brain always wants to take shortcuts, and we take shortcuts about everything. And she uses the example of, let's say you go to McDonald's. I don't, but let's say you do. You walk in the door. What do?
Order.
Yeah. Why don't you wait for someone to seat you?
What? Because that would take. Because then you never get your food.
Yeah, because that's not what happens there. So you walk in, and even a kid that's 4 years old that's been to McDonald's a couple times, and that's called a schema. It's a brain shortcut.
They know the process there.
Yeah. They just know the deal. And she said we do the same thing with people. We have people schemas where we say, this is how this person's going to act.
That's exactly why it's so hard. Even if someone changes, that's why it's so hard for them to actually stick that, because everyone else treats them like they used to be.
100%. And they will continue to have a schema about you, even if you're showing them a lot of evidence that you are not that anymore. Exactly right. So, and the reason for that, again, is shortcuts. The brain doesn't want to work that hard. It takes a lot of energy to run a brain. And that's why we sleep. She said, we don't sleep for the physical part. We sleep because the brain needs that time because it's working so hard. The brain needs that time to recalibrate and rest. Isn't that so fascinating? That is. And okay, I'm going to add one more crazy piece. I know. I'm going to add one more crazy piece because I think I started laughing. So when you dream at night, you're having crazy dreams, right? Like you're jumping off cliffs with buffaloes and then a flying unicorn catches you. Like you have all these crazy dreams. The reason that you're dreaming like that is because the feelings part, that limbic part of your brain is always operating, but that front part of your brain goes, quote, offline when you sleep because it's resting. So there's no logic. So you have these crazy dreams. That's why. Okay, like sorry, I got totally off. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. But I think it's fascinating to think about all this as we relate it, though, to connecting with other people. I mean, it really is so much more complex than we realize. And we want to, I feel like we want to minimize some things to as humans, because again, we don't like to think about things too much. It's hard. We want to create these shortcuts. We want to have thinking shortcuts and we want to have feeling shortcuts. And if we see someone that we're really close to that's needing support in some way or we need to have a discussion because we need something from them, we're going to try to shortcut as much as we possibly can, because that's how we naturally work as humans. But I think what we then do is we might get sidelined in a loop of something else to make us feel like we're not doing that, to make us feel like we're more energetically involved. And I think that's also where a lot of people go sideways, because they just can't be present. They're not listening.
Yeah. So your suggestion would be like really muster up the energy to be fully engaged in a conversation.
Just focus on the here and now of the conversation.
Yeah, maybe like if you are actually kind of tired, you should maybe just say, hey, I'm kind of tired. I want to be in this conversation with you, but I'm kind of tired.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen. That's my brain's not working at full speed.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Exactly.
Can we shift gears a little bit? You went
Of course. I'm sorry.
You went
I went
really
off on a
scientific
tangent
there for a minute.
I never do, but I was with Mary.
I did another thing this week. I went to like a random networking event, which you know I love.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me about it.
Wow. Goes about how well
Did you do a lot of connections? Huh?
No, I mean, it's like, again, it's like a room of like people I don't know. And, not most people don't know each other. So it's a lot of like standing around and trying to do like, what do you do? Like, is it your first time to this event? Like all that dumb stuff. I say that's about how it went. You can tell already.
You know what though?
Well,
I have a ton of respect for you, because you do this consistently. You
put myself
make
in
yourself do this.
places where I feel awkward as like a nearly 50-year-old person. Yeah, it's great. Like
So, go ahead, I interrupted
extending middle school awkwardness through my whole entire life.
Oh my God. Awful. I'm embarrassed now, and I wasn't even there.
Well, it's fun. You're right. I do it. I go do this stuff. But it doesn't actually, like, it still is awkward. Like, I hate that little like, oh, should I like walk up to this table and randomly talk to somebody? Sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't. But just that I wanted to talk just a little bit about that icebreaker moment, because I think a lot of people feel the same thing I feel, which is like there is like a resistance to that.
There is.
Now, some folks love that, being in that position, like, oh, someone I've never met.
I don't know.
Like, let's go.
I don't know if that's true.
Is it? Are you sure? Feels like some people love it.
I don't know.
No, maybe some people are just better at it. That's why I go get better at it.
Yeah. They're better at putting on the actor self.
But there is an interesting social thing happening in those environments where some people are in conversations. You might not be. You kind of feel like you should try to get engaged in some conversation. And then again, back to that high school or like middle school position, it's just like, oh, the people who are having good conversations must, I don't know, be the popular kids here.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole weird social context around that kind of conversation that happens a lot of times in work events or like social events where you don't know people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. And I am much higher extrovert than you are. And I still feel like that. It's just, it feels awkward. And you just have to just go through. It's almost like break the terror barrier and go through
the motion, go get through it.
Yeah. That's those are awkward. I don't like having awkward conversations of any variety, to be fair.
Well, some of them turn into like good conversations pretty quickly.
I agree. Yeah.
And so
because you find your connections.
Yeah. And so it's not you don't want to not try. That's not the point, because like maybe more than half of them work out to be like good conversations. But I always find that part of conversation really interesting. The other part of conversation I find interesting that I like to use is silence. There's also this weird thing around conversation and silence, like awkward silence, or if you're silent, you're, something's wrong.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking that too. Like the first thing I went to as you said that was as I was talking earlier about being willing to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
I think sitting with someone and not talking is very vulnerable because you are not telling your story.
Mm.
And as I always say, if you're not telling your story, they're telling your story. They're making assumptions, even people that are close.
Yeah, it sometimes feels like talking is armor or something. Like
Yeah.
if you're talking
Yeah.
and you're filling the space with other things and it seems safer for some reason for some people.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I agree with you. I feel like sitting in companionable silence.
Oh, that's a great term. Companionable silence.
Yeah. I mean, that feels really nice. But that is an assumption that there's vulnerability and trust and openness. Like it's not closed. It's not quiet and closed. It's quiet and open. But what has to happen for that to occur in a relationship?
Yeah, quite a bit of trust, I think.
Yeah. And knowing the person?
Yeah.
Like, does your level of knowingness of someone filter how much talk there has to be in a space?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, do you ever, like, well, this is, with me, like, I don't mind just sitting in silence. Amber hates it. Like, like, I even drive my car usually with, like, no radio or podcast or anything on. Just, like,
I have been doing that.
Complete silence. And I actually like it, and Abby actually really likes it. Amber hates it. She's like, why is the radio not on? She has to have something coming in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You think it's a personality driver?
It could definitely be just a personality thing.
Well, it's hard to say, though, because this is when I always am kind of fascinated, because you and I have opposite personalities on the quadrants. And I really like silence, too. Like, I could just be outside in my yard and doing nothing and having no sound and just sitting on a chair and just enjoying the quiet, being in my car with nothing on either. Now I'm an only child.
We're going the opposite of the conversation. We're like, now we're building like, yes, and being alone is amazing.
So all this conversation stuff, we don't need it. Let's just be alone.
Okay, we didn't even scratch this. We didn't even scratch the surface of conversation yet.
No, I know.
So we're gonna have to do we're gonna have to follow up on this, because there's so much about conversation and connecting with people that's like important for mental health and how it extends relationships and like so much more to explore on this topic. But we probably got to scoot.
Well, and I think too, it's just important for people. I think it'd be important for people to spend a little time thinking about what kinds of conversations they have. And the only other thing, I'd add one more thing though. What about the conversations that we're having that are absolutely worthless, but we're doing it because we're avoiding having a real conversation?
Yeah, right. Okay, to be continued.
Okay, sounds good.
I.e. most conversation. Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.